Hey everybody, movie reviewer next door here, and I'm back on another review. And this time I saw Ransom. It's a 1996 mystery thriller film directed by Ron Howard, and it stars Mel Gibson, Rene Russo, Gary Sinise, Delroy Lindo, Lily Taylor, Lev Schreiber, Donnie Wahlberg, Evan Handler, and Brawley Nolte. In this film, when a rich man's son is kidnapped, he cooperates with the police at first, but then tries a unique tactic against the criminals. So, what did I think of Ransom? Well, I don't think it's a bad film. It's definitely super well made, well shot, score's great, but it is kind of lacking in the thriller section. It's one of those where it yes, you can see the budget with how well it's made in a way, but also with that budget comes the feeling of deja vu, where I don't usually talk about this, but so many thrillers that I see that are from this time, from the 90s and all that, are so insanely generic. So they need a gimmick like this one, but it doesn't really do a ton with the gimmick, to be honest. But let me get to the cast. Mel Gibson plays Tom Mullen. He's an airline owner whose son is kidnapped. I think Mel Gibson gives a good performance as usual. I've almost never seen him give a bad performance. He's just one of those actors. You get him from film and you're going to get something out of him interesting. Rene Russo plays Catherine Mullen, his wife. She's fine. She doesn't really do a lot, to be honest. That tends to happen in thrillers like this. I mean, his name is the only one really on the poster, like in big letters. So it's going to focus more on him. She's still fine, though. Gary Sinise plays Detective Jimmy Shaker. He's a, this isn't a spoiler because the first scene, like the first scenes he's in, you find this out. Uh, he's the kidnapper. Um, and he's he's fine. I usually like Gary Sinise more than this. He was better in that Julianne Moore film. What was it? The Forgotten. He was better in that for sure. Um, but here he's doing this really odd accent that it just really does not fit for him. It's really it takes my attention away from the movie whenever he uses it. Sometimes he's using it, sometimes he's not. I'm guessing it's supposed to be a cover, but yeah, he's up and down. Delroy Lindo plays Agent Lonnie Hawkins. He's an FBI agent helping Tom out to what he thinks he should do order to get his kid back. I like Delroy Lindo. He does a good job here. Lily Taylor plays Maria. Excuse me, Maris. She's one of the kidnappers or one of the helpers in the kidnapping. She's fine. I don't remember. I know she's been in random stuff, but I other than like The Haunting, I can't think of a lot of things she's been in. I think she was in Eli, that like horror movie. I can't remember. Um, Liv Schreiber plays Clark Barnes. He's another one of them. He's fine. Donnie Wahlberg as well as Cubby Barnes. He's fine. Evan Handler as Miles Roberts. He's the last one of the kidnappers. I hated him, actually. He's the worst actor in the film. Uh, but yeah, he seems drunk the entire movie. I think that's a part of his thing, but it's like bad drunk, like very obviously pantomime. And I don't know if he was meant to be comedy. He says some fucked up things, but I don't think it was meant to be comedy. I'm not sure. But I hated him. And Brawley Nolte as Sean Malone, the kid. He actually did a pretty alright job for the most part. There's a scene near the end of the film where I was like, I can tell this kid is actually fearful. Like, whenever you can get a child actor to actually express the emotion of fear, I'd say you've done your job well as a director. But Rod Howard, I want to talk about Rod Howard a little bit. I have not seen a ton of his films. I've seen quite a few of them though. I've seen How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which I still like. I've seen Hillbilly Elegy, which I did enjoy. I'd say I enjoyed Hillbilly Elegy a bit more than this. Backdraft is a great film. Stunning action sequences having to do with fire. The ending is so fucking cool. CGI will never be able to compare to practical effects. Cocoon is a fantastic drama. Uh, but yeah, like Ron Howard is very clearly a very talented director. He's a talented actor too. He's in my current favorite John Wayne film, The Shootist. I love him in that. I love John Wayne in that. I love Lauren Bacall in that. I love everything about that film. Uh, but yeah, like I do really like Ron Howard for sure as an actor and a director. This film though, I went into it knowing that some people consider it one of his lesser movies, and I can really see that. It has decent enough reviews though, which let me actually look at what Hillbilly Elegy's rating is because I'm curious. 2.7 out of 5. Yeah, I'm surprised. I think the acting in Hillbilly Elegy was definitely better. Even though again, I like Mel Gibson in this. I think Rene Russo's fine. I can definitely say that the acting in Hillbilly Elegy is better. It's definitely a bit more over the top, that's for sure. But um I still enjoyed it more than the acting in this. Um I think this film's biggest issue is how predictable it is. Because you have this concept that doesn't really come into the movie until like halfway through, where for like a good hour of the film, or a good like at least 45, 50 minutes of the start of the film, you have your generic, for the most part, hostage thriller where things are happening and no one can get a hold of the kidnapper. The kidnapper's doing all this monotonous shit to spin the people around in circles to try to keep them off his trail. That whole thing. That happens in like literally every hostage thriller, and to be honest, it kind of lost me a bit. Um, and again, it's not that it's badly made. This is a very well-made film. Uh, but it took me until the twist. Well, it's not even a twist. It's in the fucking trailer. The where Mel Gibson's character puts out a ransom on the killers, and instead of saying, "I'm going to give you this money if you give my son back," he says, "I'm going to send everyone in the out after you, and if they can find my son, they'll get $2 million," which is an interesting idea, and I wish they had done a bit more with that. It's kind of a similar thing to what happened in the movie SWAT, where the villain says $100 million to whoever helps me escape. But then the movie really doesn't do anything with that. It it has that concept that is the concept that is in the trailer, plastered throughout that trailer for SWAT. And then it really doesn't do much with it. There's one scene where a bunch of gangs start bringing out all this heavy artillery in the streets and shit. And I think you could have had a like action spectacular, but I also think you needed a better director than Clark Johnson. Even though I haven't seen anything else he's done, I don't think his directing was right for that. You needed someone like Isaac Florentine. Isaac Florentine could have, like, given the budget SWAT had, Isaac Florentine could have done so fucking much with it. Because he knows how to stretch budgets, but and deliver very exciting action. But here you have a very similar thing. You have this concept of anyone who can find the man who abducted my kid, return my kid to me, will get $2 million. You'd expect montages or scenes of people trying to find his kid, or people who actually recognized his kid in the crowd. Like, say somebody in the crowd at the science fair was a police officer or something, and they saw where the kid went. But they at that time didn't know it was a kidnapping. Like that whole thing, like giving them clues and helping them work off of that in order to find the kid, I think that would have been a bit more of an interesting way to go about it than just even after this ransom thing, it still is kind of your typical hostage film. It doesn't really deviate that much from your normal hostage movie formula. And other than the ending, which I do think the ending is very satisfying. But other than the ending, it's again just kind of your normal hostage movie. There's not a lot interesting that happens in this. You have scenes of kind of false tension where you know because of literally like the budget. Like I think at this point I can recognize a lot of the twists and scenes where they try to subvert expectations in these big budget R-rated thrillers from back in the day because they make it so obvious. Like, I don't know if I want to do a spoiler. I'll just say something happens, but once you see it, you're like, oh, they want you to cry because you're supposed to think something happened, but then it didn't. It's one of those things where it's like a bait and switch. They like show you something, and then the next scene, it's like, oh, whatever. Well, okay, whatever. Spoiler alert, 11:45. There you go. Um, there's a bit in this film where I could see it fucking coming. I could see this coming from a mile away. They were gonna have the scene where everybody's listening in through the FBI stuff, and you're gonna think Gary Sinise shot the kid because they show him pointing the gun exactly where the kid is. Gun goes off, hear it over the phones, and then people are supposed to think the kid's dead. That could work if you waited longer than one scene to show that the kid was all right. I understand this is probably trying to go for a popcorn thriller thing, but there are times where this film takes itself so serious that there's no way that's what it's going for. It's going for a slow burn mystery thriller thing, and I can see people getting bored of this film. So I'm guessing that was done to be like, okay, you still have something to look out for. The kid's not actually dead. Even though you could have had like a bit where you could have still said like, oh, you could have waited like 20 minutes to find out the kid was okay, which I don't see why that would have been an issue. But that just tends to happen a lot in these types of thrillers. They're like, "Oh my God, the kid's dead. We're having this emotional moment. Mel Gibson's getting his Oscar moment." I don't think this film was going for Oscars, but like that's what it feels like. It feels so manufactured. And I would have felt it more if I didn't know that if I didn't feel like, oh wait, they're just gonna show that he's okay in the next scene. They didn't actually kill the kid. And yeah, it's false tension. It just doesn't work for me. Um, Same thing with how they do the Gary Sinise thing. Because I want to talk more about that. Even though I already said Gary Sinise is the villain, it's not that hard to tell just looking at him and how he talks to people. He's very obviously the villain, and he shows up very early in the film as the villain. I kind of wish they had done this to the point where you don't see him until like near the end of the film, and then like the audience recognizes that Gary Sinise is the kidnapper slightly before Mel Gibson's character does. Like you can still have him show up as the cop, but I think showing him with the other kidnappers and the other members of the team was a bit of a mistake because I think that kind of kills the mystery portion of it because it isn't a mystery to the audience at all. Like, this is supposed to be a mystery thriller. That's what it's billed as. That's what it's marketed as. But I don't know, just something about how quickly and nonchalantly they reveal that Gary Sinise is the leader of the kidnappers. I was just like, whatever. Like, I didn't really care. Like the scene where he shoots the other guys in the van trying to get away. and then his girlfriend. I think that would have definitely had more. I think it would have been more interesting if we just saw him like come across them in the way he does in the film, but in a way where we don't yet know that he's them, he's with them, but like he talks to them differently. Like say he says like something about friend or something like that. That would have been more interesting to me, but it just kind of falls flat for me. The fact that they reveal he's the villain so early. This film has an issue with reveals because the scene at the end where Gary Sinise is like trying to get the money out of Mel Gibson's character, I'm just like, yeah, I already know that he's the kidnapper. The only people that don't are Mel Gibson and Rene Russo's characters, and the kid sees him and like you can see that he recognizes the killer's voice or the kidnapper's voice. But like, yeah, it's just one of those things where I'm just like, really? That's it? That's what you're doing? And while I did still enjoy the ending, this is definitely a low 7 for me. It is very close to a 6, but there are some pretty interesting parts. Like acting wise, I think Mel Gibson really goes for it in a couple scenes. There's a scene where he's yelling at the kidnapper over the phone, and then the scene where he's crying, and I think he does a great job. Same with Rene Russo in that scene. But overall, do I fully recommend this? Not really. Like, you'd think like with a 7, I recommend it. If it was maybe a high 7, I have a slight recommend. If you're into Ron Howard's movies, you might like this. I love Ron Howard, and this is probably my least favorite film of his so far. Um, I haven't seen Da Vinci Code yet, so I guess we'll see. But yeah, this is definitely one of those thrillers that is just kind of whatever for me. But yeah, that was my review of Ransom. If you've seen the film, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you have any recommendations, put them down there as well. And movie reviewer next door.